Now, you've written another book which is just coming out right now. It's called Beat the Favorites, featuring updated information on horse racing and how to pick a favorite. Tell us a little bit about that book. You've written so many.
Well, the idea was to try and beat the favorite, not pick the favorite.
Okay.
And what you want to do is you're only going to be right a certain number of times. And I handicap daily for the Daily Gazette in Schenectady. And almost every year, each meet from Saratoga to Aqueduct or Belmont, I'll be somewhere between 25 and 32%. And what you want to do is, because you're not going to be right all the time, is that when you are right, you want to find horses that pay more than they should. So if you can beat the favorite, that's a good thing. But I had done a handicapping book for the Daily Racing Forum 6 years ago called Go for the Green. And in that book, I compiled a list of 800 turf dams who had produced graded stakes winners from their offspring. And I updated that for this book, and there have already been 5 horses that won at the Saratoga meet in the first 3 or 4 weeks from their dam, their mother being on that list. And one of them, Star Torina, paid $25.80, and which is a nice winner to have anytime. So the list is very valuable, and it's a huge list. But if a mare appears on that book, she's done it before, and they usually can do it more than one time. So it's hopefully helpful.
Okay, and your last book that we want to talk about. By the way, if one wants to get a copy of any of your books, how can they purchase them?
Well, we're selling them out on a website. It's www.billhellerbooks.com.
Right.
My son Benjamin helped me with the website, and we're doing this on our own because the first 22 books are so lucrative that I still drive a 2001 Honda Civic.
Now, Jose Santos also has a website, and you can buy the book on Jose Santos.
Right.
Above it all on his website as well?
Yes, that's josesantosbook.com, and there's a link between the two.
Now, Captain Freelance, The Check is in the Mail, is a very interesting book, and being in the same nonsense that you're in, I can relate a lot to it. You want to talk about your career and what led to the writing of Captain Freelance?
Well, it's like sometimes, you worry about a book if you have enough material. This book, I had more material. I could have written 6 books, and it's all true. When you're a freelance writer, you're kind of dependent on people keeping their word and sending you a check. And the overriding thing that I've heard in 35 years of doing this is the check is in the mail. And usually it's not in the mail, and usually if it is in the mail, it may not be for the same price. And you refer to me as a BTA, which I make fun of myself in the book as a big-time author. And the first book I did was a biography of basketball coach Bill Musselman. He coached the Albany Patroons in the CBA, and then he was the first coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves in the NBA. And we did that. That first book, it was called Obsession, and excuse me, it was going to be sold at Walden's in Colony Center. And it was 3 weeks before Christmas, and I went the night before, and the entire display was just my book. And I said, oh my God. So the next day we did a book signing. They set us up at a table, so everybody had to walk by us. And in 2 hours for my first book, I sold 4 books. However, I got to tell a dozen people where the bathroom was, another 6 or 7 where Friendly's is. And so it was not quite lucrative doing 4 books in 2 hours. And then I think I've set a record, I don't think anybody's going to break it, is I've done 0 at other book signings. However, at one I did a -1 because I not only didn't sell a book, but one of my friends showed up and wanted to buy one. I gave it to him. So it hasn't been a lot of people waiting in lines to buy your books, and getting taken on a book tour and whatever. But it's still something that I love to do. And one of the most fun chapters in Captain Freelance is the day I wrote at Saratoga, which again is also true. And most people, if you ask them what's the stupidest thing you've ever done, they have to think for a minute. Well, I don't have to think for a minute, because in 1980, our mutual friend Ed Louie, who did all the marketing for NYRA, decided to have a media race on open house in front of 10,000 people. And they actually not only got trail horses, they actually loaded us into the starting gate at the 16th pole and let us come out of the starting gate, which is I'm amazing that I even survived, because I had never ridden a horse. And so I brilliantly decided the night before to go and get a half-hour riding lesson, and that didn't help too much. So yeah, that was one chapter, and it was quite amazing to be coming out of the starting gate at Saratoga.
Well, I can relate to Ed Louis putting one in precarious situations, because many times I rode elephants in the Ringling Brothers Martin and Bailey circus parade, and the first time I rode an elephant, I just got on the elephant, and going down 4th Street in Troy, the elephant got hungry and started eating a maple tree, and then got thirsty and started drinking water out of a puddle. So our friend Ed Louis has helped us all. What would you say to boys and girls or young adults considering a career in journalism? I mean, it's been a fun life. I highly recommend it. Would you recommend it as well?
Well, I think you could take reference by the title of my first chapter, Are You Insane?
Right.
My son Benjamin was like about 8 or 9 years old. He says, boy, I don't want to do what you do. And I said, why? He says, A, you work too hard, check. B, you don't get paid enough, check. So, but it's something that I don't think there's a lot of professions where you can honestly keep getting better as you get older.
Right.
But as a writer and even as a handicapper, if you have a level head and are willing to learn, it's something you can keep getting better at. And the adventures that I've had, including, getting to tour China, a free tour of China for 8 days, was amazing. There's another chapter in Captain Freelance. A friend of mine had developed a car that ran on vegetable oil, and I actually got to ride in that, which was really, really cool. And, a chance to interview Mike Tyson or watch him spar, at the age of 17 before he became heavyweight champion. So the adventures and covering the Albany Patroons and the adventures of flying them when they made the championship run in 1984, and they were coached by Phil Jackson. The Patroons were an amazing team. It was the Continental Basketball Association, the minor league, but we had Phil Jackson, who subsequently won 11 NBA championships. We had George Karl, who's still coaching in the NBA with Denver. And then we had Bill Musselman, who was the first coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves. So to think these 3 great coaches all were in Albany, it's kind of cool. And covering them, and then I became their media relations director, it was never a dull moment.
What suggestion would you have for folks considering a career in journalism?
I say if you want it, go for it, because it's a field where there's a lot of turnover.
Syracuse University is a great journalism school, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I didn't go there, but I went to Albany State, and one of my teachers happened to be William Kennedy, who of course won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction with his book Ironweed. But back then, when I took his course, he was Bill Kennedy, somebody who had worked at the Knickerbocker News. So who knew? But he taught, of course, the new journalism that was fascinating, and there was a head of department, Dr. William Rowley, who was just a great journalist and helped me incredibly. But if you want it, go for it, and go for it hard. And you have to be willing to hear no.
Okay,
you have to.
Go ahead.
My first book was a biography of Bill Musselman. I got an agent in New York. I got turned down by 17 publishing houses, and I said, well, what do we do now? He says, give up. Well, I'm not the give up type. So the first phone call I made, found a company in Chicago, Bonus Books, that did a lot of sports books. They not only did the Musselman book, they did my first handicapping book, Overlay.
Well, Bill Heller, I want to thank you so much for joining us. And again, if folks want to get in touch with you or get a copy of your many books, how can they reach you?
www.billhellerbooks.com.